This conference will now be recorded.
That's fine. So basically, I will take a short session. I don't want to miss out any session, so I'll take a short session and then we'll continue tomorrow. Okay, so before starting today's session, so let's try to understand what I learned in the previous session. So in the previous session, we understood what Hive is, right? So Hive is a simple data warehousing tool in the big data world, using which we can analyze your big data. And why do we need Hive? Because of the complexity that is involved in MapReduce coding, you have to basically switch back to Hive instead of MapReduce, because if it is MapReduce, you have to write lot of code in Java, which is a kind of very complex thing. So that's where Hive came into the world, and then Hive is very simple compared with MapReduce. And we understood what is metadata, right? And we have seen what is the relationship between data and metadata. Right? So we have seen various examples. So we have seen metadata in general. We have seen metadata with respect to databases, and then we have seen metadata with respect to Hive as well, right? So in Hive we can have Hive metastore, which is nothing but a database. So it can be any of these 5 databases, right? Any of these 5 databases. But remember, DB is never used in the real-time projects. And then we have seen how to connect to Hive metastore DB and how to get the details about metastore DB. We have seen all that. And also we have seen the architecture of Hive. This is highly important. So I would highly encourage you to be perfect with this architecture. So now let's get into the hands-on. So I'm going to open my Cloudera Quick Start VM here. Right click anywhere on the desktop. Say open in terminal. Maximize. Click on view and click on zoom in twice. And then here you can launch Hive. Type Hive, hit enter. So this should take around 10 seconds to launch Hive. Let's wait for 10 seconds. So Hive shell has been launched. So again, you might be seeing these 2 lines. Ignore these 2 lines for now. We'll talk about these 2 lines little later. But for now, just understand that you are able to launch Hive and you are able to run any Hive queries within this Hive shell. So to start with, let's try to understand how to see the list of all the databases. Show databases will give the list of all the databases. So right now you can see that there is only one default database that we generally don't touch. We will create our own databases and then use it. So now let's see how to create our own database. Create database test. So here I'm trying to create a database with a name called as test. Hit enter and just use up arrow on your keyboard and try to run show databases once again. Now you can see that it's showing us 2 rows, right? So what is the meaning of 2 rows? It's nothing but we have 2 different databases that we have. One is the default database, then the other one is nothing but the test database. So we have 2 databases totally. Now you can see that here clearly it's showing us 2 rows, and you can see it showing us okay is nothing but your query ran successfully, and then you can also see the time taken by your query. So totally it took around 0.021 seconds, right? Now let's do one thing. Let's try to rerun the same command once again. Just use up arrow on your keyboard. I'm trying to rerun the same command once again. Let us see the behavior. You can see that it's failing. So what is the reason behind this failure? What is the reason behind this failure? So it's very clear that database test already exists, and we are trying to create one more database with the same name. So database name must be unique. You cannot have duplicate database names. So that's what is throwing an error saying you cannot have 2 databases with the same name because the test database already exists, right? Now we have basically seen how to see the list of all the databases, and we have seen how to create the database. Let's also see how to describe the database. So how to describe the database. But before that, let me show you one more interesting way of creating a database. So whenever you try to create a database, what we can do is we can actually include something called as if not exists. So what is the meaning of if not exists? It will create the database only if it doesn't exist. Let me show it practically. Show databases. Right now we have only two databases. Suppose I wanted to create a database with a name called as October. I wanted to create a database with the name called as October 2022. Then I can go ahead and say create database. And then here I'm going to include if not exists. So create database if not exists. And let's say the database name is October 2022. So have a look at this statement. We are trying to say if not exists. What is the meaning of this? Before creating this database with the name called as October 2022, it will try to look if there are or if there is any database already with the same name. Do we already have a database with the name called as October 2022? No, we don't have, right? We just have only two databases. So then this should go ahead and then create a database with the name called as October 2022. Guys, just to confirm, you guys can see my screen, right? Can someone confirm? Am I audible? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Adnan, I think others can see my screen. Probably you had to rejoin.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, you can see that I'm trying to create a database by using if not exists. So first, it will check if we already have a database with the name called as October 2022. We don't have it. Hence, it will go ahead and then create a database with the name called as October 2022. So let's run show databases. Now have a look here. We have the database called as October 2022 created. Right. Now, if I try to rerun the same command once again, will it throw an error? If I try to rerun the same create database command again, will it throw an error? Let's find out. Just use up arrow on the keyboard and say create database if not exists, same database name. So two things you should notice here. First one is it's not throwing any error when you try to create a database. At the same time, it's not creating any duplicate database with the same name. If you see show databases, we have only one database with the name called as October 2022. So this is actually considered as the best practice of creating databases in the projects, because we are making sure that we are avoiding any of the automation failures when you run your Hive scripts. So in the interviews, you may get a question such as, can you tell me some of the best practices that you have followed in your project? Yes, you can highlight this as one of the best practice, because we are making sure that none of the database creation will result in any failure if you go with this. So as I told in the earlier session, to clear the screen, I can use Ctrl+L on my keyboard. That will clear the screen for me. So let's try to see how to describe the database. I want to describe the test database. Describe space test. Okay, you have to say describe space database space test. To see the output clearly, I wanted to zoom out. Click on view and click on zoom out twice. Let's rerun the same command again. I'm trying to describe the database called as test. You can see the output. It's showing us test is the database name, and it was created by the Cloudera user. So everything is fine, but I see one more thing interesting. You can see that it is pointing to one of the HDFS location. Now, how am I saying that it's a HDFS location? Because it is starting with / user here, right? Any path that is starting with / user, that is considered to be Hadoop location or HDFS location. Now, let's actually do one more thing. Let's set the title for this terminal. Terminal set title give it as Hive, click on OK, and open one more terminal. How do you open one more terminal? If you can click here, that will actually open one more terminal for you. Let's do that. So click on View and click on Zoom in twice. Terminal, set title. I want to use this for any HDFS or Linux commands. Click on OK. Now I'm actually going to go to this path. So let's go to this path. User Hive warehouse path. So just go to this path and then try to select that path, right click, copy it, then try to basically perform ls operation on top of it. So the command is hdfs plus dfs -ls, right click and paste that path, enter. So guys, just give me 1 minute. So if we can observe here clearly, just to see the output clearly, I wanted to zoom out, click on view and zoom out. Let me run the same command again. So if you notice one thing clearly, I am under user Hive warehouse path. This is HDFS location path. I can see two directories here because these are starting with D. And if you look at the database names, it's very interesting. So these database names, so these folder names or these directory names are same as are of your databases that you have created in Hive. Let me show what I'm talking. So so if we can go to Hive terminal, say show databases, you can see that we have the databases with the name called as test in October 2022, and we can see the corresponding directory for each of those databases. So the point which I wanted to convey here is whenever you try to create a database in Hive, it will create a corresponding directory in HDFS under user Hive warehouse path. Let me make a note of it. So let me try to write that point here. When you create a database in Hive, it will create a corresponding directory in HDFS. Under which path? Under user Hive warehouse path. So now I will ask you one interview question here. How HDFS and Hive are integrated, or to put it in a different way, how come that it's creating a directory in HDFS and that to this path when I create a database in Hive? How are these two related? So to answer that question, you need to understand some more concepts. So I'll go to my Hive terminal, and here I'm going to say set and then semicolon. So this set is actually used to see the list of all the properties in Hive or the Hive parameters. Hit enter. You can see that there are multiple properties. Now when I say property, it's a combination of key value pair put together. If you see the highlighted part now, it is actually a Hive property. So Hive property is a combination of two things. It's a combination of key and value. So whatever you have on the left hand side is nothing but a key, and whatever you have on the right hand side is nothing but a value. Now, as these are all starting with system, these are all system related properties. And then if I can scroll up, so you can see that these are all starting with env. These are all environmental related properties. So if I can little more scroll up, you can see there are some map reduce related properties. There are some Java related properties, there are some Hive related properties. So now we understood how to see the Hive parameters on Hive shell. Now, is it possible to run Hive commands on Linux shell? Is it possible to run Hive commands on Linux shell? The answer is yes. So you can say Hive space -e. In the double quotes, you can give any valid Hive query. Suppose if I say show databases, it will give me the list of all the databases that we have in Hive. So I'm trying to run Hive queries on Linux terminal. First step is it is going to connect to Hive, and you can see that if you are seeing this line is an indication that it is time to connect to Hive, and it ran the query that whatever you have given in double quotes, and it is giving us the results, and then finally it is closing the connection to Hive. Now, can I filter out this output? Suppose I wanted to find out if there is any database with a name called as October in it. I can use Linux command called as grep October. This will again try to connect to Hive. It will run that query. It will give you the results. From the results, we are trying to check if you have any database with the name called as October in it. You can see that we have the database called as October in it. So similarly, I'm going to run set query here. That is Hive space -e set semicolon. Again, this will try to connect to Hive. It will run set query. It will print all the properties of Hive. Then finally, it will close the connection to Hive. You can see that it printed all the properties of Hive, and then finally it's closing the connection to Hive. So from this, I can do any filtration by using grep again. Let's say I wanted to grep for all the Hive properties which contains warehouse in it. So again, this is going to connect to Hive. It's going to grep, or it's going to filter out only the properties in Hive which contains warehouse in it. Now, why are we seeing only these two lines? Because these two lines contains warehouse in it. You can see that as these two properties contains warehouse in it, hence we are able to see this output. Now I'm more interested in the first one. So we have a parameter called as hive.metastore.warehouse.var. Let's copy this. Go to the Hive terminal, set space that particular property name. If you have a closer look at the value here, it's showing us user Hive warehouse, right? So now to answer my question, how HDFS and Hive are integrated? They are integrated by this. So this is how, whenever you try to create a database in Hive, it will automatically create a corresponding directory in HDFS under user Hive warehouse path. So I think we are good, right? So let's go here. So we have seen how to describe the database. We have seen how to check the corresponding directory in HDFS, right? Now let's see how to switch to the databases, or how to use the databases, or how to connect to the databases. So let's go back here. So I have, okay, let me say show databases once again. So I have these databases. Suppose I wanted to switch to October 2022 database. Then you just have to say use space October 2022. So here I have switched or connected to the October 2022 database. And once you are inside that database, you can say show tables to see the list of all the tables. So as this is a freshly created database, you are not seeing anything within this database. It's all empty. So we have seen how to use the database or how to switch to a database by using use command. We have also seen how to see the list of all the tables in a database in Hive. Now let me tell you one more interesting scenario. So let's say you're working in a project. You're working in a project, and imagine that you have two databases or two environments. Let's say you have non-prod, non-production environment, and imagine that you have production environment. So you have two kinds of environments in most of the projects. So imagine that there is a table called as, let's say that there is a table called as orders. Orders is the table name. And interestingly, this table is available in both the environments. So in production, we have table with the name called as orders. In non-production also, we have the table with the same name, right? So let's say that we wanted to make the changes in the non-production database. It's nothing but this. But as the table names are same, you've accidentally connected to production environment database, and then you have made changes on a wrong table. You are supposed to make changes in the non-production one, but you have done the changes on a wrong database, on a wrong table basically, because the table names are same. That happens, right? Because the table names are same, you might be a little confused. And if you have connected to a wrong database, you might be making changes to the wrong table. So that will have a lot of project impacts. To avoid all that problems, there is a trick that you can follow when you're working on Hive. There is a way to see the database name that you are connected to. So let me go back here. So I'm on my Linux terminal right now. Hive space -e set, and then try to grep for current. So what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to run Hive commands on Linux shell. This will connect to Hive. It will run set query. From the output, we are trying to check if there is any property in Hive which contains current in it. So why is this being printed? Because the reason is we have current within this property. And this is what we want. What I can do is I can copy this property name, select it, right click copy, go to Hive terminal, set space that particular property name. Now you can see the current value is showing as false. But now I wanted to update it to true. So I can immediately change it to true. So you can even confirm whether you have updated it to true or not by using the same set query again. Immediately you should notice one change. As soon as you set this property to true, you can notice that immediately it is showing the database name that you are currently connected to, right? So suppose let's say I wanted to switch to test database, use space test, it will immediately show the database name here. Suppose if I switch to October 2022 again, it will again show the database name here. Right? I hope it is clear for you. So this is a very, very handy option that I would highly encourage you to set it up when you work on Hive. Because if you set this property in Hive, you'll get to know the current database that you are currently using. It would avoid any unnecessary problems, especially if you have the table name same in multiple databases. You should be able to clearly make a distinction between two different databases if you set this property. So we have, there is one question in the chat. So after setting it to true, is it prod or non-prod? So it's not about prod or non-prod. So just think that, okay, let's say that this October 22 is your production database and this test is nothing but your non-production database, right? So it's basically used to show the database name that you're currently working on so that you can make the changes in a correct table in a correct database. So that's the whole intention behind setting this property. I hope it is clear. So so that you will get to know once you join the project. So how to know whether it's a production database or non-production database, all the details you'll get it from your project team. Okay, I think we are good. So we have created the databases by using create database. And if I say show databases, I can see these databases. I can even drop these databases, but before dropping these databases, understand one more important thing. As and when you create a database in Hive, it creates a corresponding directory in HDFS under this path. Now, what will happen if I try to drop this database? Drop space, database name is test. So I have dropped the database. You can say show databases. I don't see test database now. I don't see test database now. And if you can go and query here, you should not see that database. Okay, as we have dropped test database, you don't see the directory here. That's dropped, that's deleted. So similarly, if I try to drop October 2022 database, that will again, you can see that database is not there. If you can go and verify here, the corresponding directory also should be deleted. It's deleted, right? So the point is clear. When you try to create a database in Hive, it will create the corresponding directory in HDFS under user Hive warehouse. So similarly, if you drop the database, it will remove the corresponding directory in HDFS from the same path, user Hive warehouse path. So you have to remember this path. Some interviewers will definitely ask this question. Can you tell me the path where all the Hive related directories are stored? You have to remember this path, user Hive warehouse. Okay, so as I told initially, guys, so I have some fever today, so I can't continue. We will close the session today and we will continue tomorrow. Okay, so thanks for understanding. See you tomorrow then.